Sorry about that. I have a habit of slipping back into the Planko language. It's good to finally meet you in person. I'm Bernard, although I insist you call me Bernie. The only person who calls me Bernard is my wife. And even then, only when I've tracked elephant dung into the carpets. As you know, I own several zoos, but I always like to show people the ropes here at my home. This is the first zoo I ever opened, and a source of great pride for me. And prides, thanks to a lion breeding program we ran in the 80s. But we're in the middle of a big renovation, and that's where you come in. Sadly, our old contractor had to retire after developing a fur allergy. Poor devil kept sneezing his dentures into the lion habitat. So, it's up to you to finish everything off. Don't worry, though. I'm not completely throwing you into the deep end. My head keeper, Nancy Jones, will be lending a helping hand. Oh, she's a hard worker, and she'll expect you to be too. But I'm sure you'll get along like a house on fire, or even better, one that isn't on fire. Less shouting that way.
Hello there. From that rosy, fresh face of yours, I'm guessing you're Bernie's new hire. Good. Now, I hope you're ready to ditch your diploma because we're about to get really hands-on. But before we begin the real work, how about we familiarize you with the zoo by learning how to fly around it and visiting some of our beautiful animals. We'll start by popping over and having a look-see at the grizzly bears in their habitat. Did you know that grizzly bears, also known as Ursus arctos horribilis, can hibernate for up to 7 months a year? Oh, but then again, given the chance, I think a lot of people would do that too. Select one of the bears and you'll bring up its information panel. This is where you can find out all kinds of information about your animal. The most important thing being its overall welfare. You'll learn more about animal welfare today as we go through your objectives. But for now, let's enjoy this magnificent animal. Why don't you select the camera at the bottom of its information panel? See now, this is a fantastic way to get a close look at your animals. You can also get this view of an animal by simply double-clicking on it. Okay, when you're ready, let's pop over to the other side of the zoo and take a look at the lions. I've marked their location for you to find.
Suffer your jumping.
Panthera leo, or the West African lion to you and me. Lions are the most social of the big cats, and there can be as many as 40 lions in a pride, although prides of that size are pretty rare. As Bernie would say, those lions are awesome, which is precisely why I handle the training instead these days. Anyway, how about we get started on those objectives? Come on, let's head over to an empty habitat and see what needs doing there. As you can see, it's a lovely space for animals, but it's missing a certain something. Well, two somethings. Warthogs. So I'd like you to adopt a pair of them. To adopt animals, we need to open the animal market, which is in the animal trading section. There we are, a pair of perfectly splendid warthogs for our zoo. Just click on them and select Adopt from the side menu. Normally the animal exchange would be full of animals, but I've emptied out the market while you learn how it works. The last thing I need is you accidentally ordering a dozen elephants. When you adopt an animal, it's automatically placed in the trade centre, where they're held until you're ready to move them into their habitat, which, as it happens, you are. So how about you move them into their new home? When you ask for an animal to be moved into a habitat, your caretakers will go to the trade centre, collect your animal and deliver them to your selected habitat. I've marked the trade centre's location, so let's go and watch the caretakers in action. Well, as you can see, those caretakers don't hang about. They'll move those animals to their destination as fast as possible. Of course, normally we'd have to place the animals into quarantine before moving them into a habitat, but I am assured by a person of good standing that these warthogs are in the very rudest of health. Right, let's get the warthog's habitat finished up so we can keep them nice and happy. You see, each animal in the zoo has an overall welfare statistic, basically how happy they are. And that overall welfare statistic is itself comprised of 4 different areas: nutrition, social health, habitat, and enrichment. Luckily, if you select an animal, you'll bring up their animal welfare information panel, which we saw earlier, where you can see how they're doing. That way, you'll know exactly what areas need to be addressed. Don't worry if that's a lot to remember. You can always check the Zoopedia for more information. Let's start by making sure we're taking care of the warthog's nutrition welfare. To do this, we'll need to place a food station and a drinking station. Now, each animal requires a different type of feeding station. And for the warthogs, it's a small feeding trough. So let's add one of those and a water bowl. Animals also require stimulation to keep them happy. Let's add a lovely mud bath for the warthogs to roll around in. That bath will count towards their enrichment welfare, specifically their toy enrichment welfare. Oh, nice work. You've got a knack for this, I see. Now, our contractor had to leave in a hurry, so this place is in a fair old state. Unfinished thingamajigs and whatsits all over the shop. But the first thing we need to finish is the ostrich habitat. It's over near the hippos. Oh, before we actually start building our ostrich habitat, let's pause the game. Just click the pause button in the bottom right corner. That's more like it. A quick break. Sometimes it's a good idea to pause the game whilst you're doing something which requires your concentration, because it'll stop the zoo spinning out of control while you're looking the other way. Let's keep the game paused while we get this ostrich habitat built. Okay, job number 1 here is to add a habitat gate before we complete the barrier. Every habitat needs a habitat gate. After all, how else would the keepers get in and out? Just make sure it's hooked up to the path so the keepers can reach it. Let's complete the perimeter barrier so we can adopt us some ostriches. I've marked out an area for you to use, so I'd like you to finish off the perimeter using the brick barrier. Good work! Remember, before you can place animals in any habitat, it has to have a full loop of connected barrier. Now, you've probably noticed that guests can't actually see into this habitat at the moment. At least not without a stepladder. But seeing as they're banned, I'd like you to select a piece of barrier and swap out the brick for a glass barrier so the guests can see in. Good work! Remember, before you can place animals in any habitat, it has to have a full loop of connected barrier. Now, you've probably noticed that guests can't actually see into this habitat at the moment. At least not without a stepladder. But seeing as they're banned, I'd like you to select a piece of barrier and swap out the brick for a glass barrier. So the guests can see in. There we go. Adding in more windows gives guests even more opportunities to see the animals in a habitat. It's always best to make sure the guests can get a good view into a habitat from the path they're walking on, because it makes them happy, and because this would be a pretty terrible zoo if they couldn't. The last thing we need to do is to add a donation box. You see, when guests enjoy the view of an animal, they'll make a donation. Just make sure you put them in easy-to-reach places, like near a viewing point. Donation boxes are one of the main sources of income for the zoo, so make sure you remember them. By the way, as well as pausing the game, you can speed the game up by clicking on the fast forward button. It'll run everything at 2 times and 5 times faster. It can be useful, especially if you're waiting for money to accumulate or for animals to be delivered to your habitat. Personally, I use it when I'm waiting for a brew to finish. All right, you've finished the habitat, so it's high time we adopted those ostriches, don't you think? Let's get 4 of them in here. While we wait for them to be collected by the caretakers and brought to the habitat, you should get it ready for them. Add a suitable feeding station, water station, and an appropriate food enrichment item. It's often best to place things like enrichments and feeding stations near to the habitat perimeter so guests can get a really good view of the animals.
Oh, good to see the ostriches have somewhere they can really stretch their legs. Did you know they can actually run at 43 miles per hour? Oh, heaven forbid they ever escape. The speed camera fines alone would bankrupt us.
Well, Bernie certainly seems impressed. Did you do his speed camera joke? Every time we get an ostrich. So, now we've made the ostriches' lives a bit better, let's do the same for the keepers, shall we? To make it easier for the keepers to feed the ostriches and hippos, we should build a new keeper hut. Keeper huts are where the keepers prepare the food for animals, so they should be placed near to the habitats to make sure the keepers don't waste their time walking when they should be looking after the animals. You'll need to rotate the keeper hut to get it to connect up to the path. This keeper hut only has space for one keeper, but the larger keeper hut can allow multiple keepers to prepare food at the same time. Oh, but bear in mind that keeper huts and other staff facilities shouldn't be placed near to areas where there are lots of guests. Guests don't like seeing facility buildings, and it can affect their happiness negatively. In case that wasn't clear. Something that all facilities, shops, and a whole host of other objects need is power, and that obviously includes your newly built keeper hut. So let's place a transformer next to it, shall we? Now, the reason everything has gone blue is because you're using the power heat map. This map allows you to see what is and what isn't powered in your zoo. So once you've placed your transformer, you can click in the bottom left to turn the heat map off. Lovely work. Now the keepers can start using the hut to prepare food, and thanks to where you've put it, they won't need to walk very far to deliver it to the ostriches and hippos. Let's get on to your next objective then. Bengal tigers. We want to adopt some, but I'm afraid there's nothing ready for them yet. Head on over to the plot of land I've marked out. It's not too far away. Righty, your next job is to build a habitat from scratch. And concrete and glass, I expect. So go ahead and build it. Just make sure that the habitat includes that big hole we've dug. Oh, and don't forget to add a habitat gate to the barrier. Oh, and make sure the guests will be able to see the tigers. really takes safety very seriously at his zoos, so we should probably make sure those tigers can't jump out of their habitat, don't you think? The way we'll do it is by changing the height of the habitat's barrier. Okay then, you should start by double-clicking the habitat barrier, which will take you into barrier editing mode. Great. Now highlight the entire perimeter of the habitat. You can do that by clicking and dragging the barrier selection tool. Great. Now highlight the entire perimeter of the habitat. You can do that by clicking and dragging the barrier selection tool. Great. Now highlight the entire perimeter of the habitat. You can do that by clicking and dragging the barrier selection tool. Great. Now highlight the entire perimeter of the habitat. You can do that by clicking and dragging the barrier selection tool. Now you've got all of the perimeter selected, you can increase the height of it by clicking and dragging the barrier height tool upwards. You'll want to make sure it reaches a height of at least 3.7 meters. Now that the habitat is in place, don't forget to put down a donation box near to your viewing areas. We need every dollar we can get. Especially as these tigers aren't exactly eating instant noodles for lunch. Okay, that's the habitat boundary complete, the habitat gate in place, and most importantly, the tigers won't be able to jump out of it anymore. I think it's time we adopted those tigers. Whilst our trusty caretakers collect and deliver the tigers, let's take a look at preparing the habitat for their arrival. We'll start with the basics. Add a suitable feeding station for them. This time, instead of adding a water bowl, let's try something different. Some animals need a pool in their habitat so they can go for a swim, but they can also use it to drink from. All you have to do is make sure the banks of the pool have a gentle slope so they can easily get a nice, refreshing drink. There's already a pool excavated, but you still need to fill it with water. You should do that by going into Terrain and selecting the water tool. Yes, that'll do nicely. Of course, just like the warthogs and ostriches, these tigers will also need some enrichment. Why don't you add some suitable toy and food enrichment items into their habitats? Okay, it's really starting to take shape. Now, the tigers will need a shelter in their habitat so they can hide from the guests, or more likely, the bad weather. Although given that we're in England, you might want to think of that just as normal weather. Go on, add a shelter to their habitat. You can either build one from various suitable bits and bobs, or if you like, just pop down the blueprint that I've already built for you. Okay, it's really starting to take shape. Now, the tigers will need a shelter in their habitat so they can hide from the guests, or more likely, the bad weather. Although given that we're in England, you might want to think of that just as normal weather. Go on, add a shelter to their habitat. You can either build one from various suitable bits and bobs, or if you like, just pop down the blueprint that I've already built for you. Okay, it's really starting to take shape. Now, the tigers will need a shelter in their habitat so they can hide from the guests, or more likely, the bad weather. Although given that we're in England, you might want to think of that just as normal weather. Go on, add a shelter to their habitat. You can either build one from various suitable bits and bobs, or if you like, just pop down the blueprint that I've already built for you. Okay, it's really starting to take shape. Now, the tigers will need a shelter in their habitat so they can hide from the guests, or more likely, the bad weather. Although given that we're in England, you might want to think of that just as normal weather. Go on, add a shelter to their habitat. You can either build one from various suitable bits and bobs, or if you like, just pop down the blueprint that I've already built for you. Poor Dabs. I'm sure it can't have escaped your attention that the tigers look a bit miffed. That's because they aren't too keen on the type of terrain in their habitat. Select a tiger and bring up its information panel. Rightio, click on the terrain tab. That way you can view the terrain information and see how they feel about the different types of terrain. That'll tell you what the tigers need more of or less of in this habitat. Rightio, click on the terrain tab. That way you can view the terrain information and see how they feel about the different types of terrain. That'll tell you what the tigers need more of or less of in this habitat. Rightio. Click on the Terrain tab. That way you can view the terrain information and see how they feel about the different types of terrain. That'll tell you what the tigers need more of or less of in this habitat. Click on the Terrain tab. That way you can view the terrain information and see how they feel about the different types of terrain. That'll tell you what the tigers need more of or less of in this habitat. Rightio. Click on the Terrain tab. That way you can view the terrain information and see how they feel about the different types of terrain. That'll tell you what the tigers need more of or less of in this habitat. Okay then, open the terrain editing tool, select painting, and give them some more soil. Yes, that should help with the habitat part of their welfare. Okay then, open the terrain editing tool, select painting, and give them some more soil. Yes, that should help with the habitat part of their welfare. Animals need plants and trees from their own biome or continent. You know, deserts, savannas, or Asia, Europe, that sort of thing. It looks like these tigers need a few more plants in their habitat. To get a perfect fit, use plants from the rainforest and temperate biomes that are native to Asia. Although if you have to, you can get away with using just one or the other. The tigers will also want a certain amount of their habitat to be covered by those plants. To find out which plants to use and how many, select a tiger and go to the Environment tab. Now, as you can see, some of the plants currently in the habitat aren't quite right for the tiger, like the wattle bushes. You can remove them if you want. You can find all of the plants you need in the nature section, and you can use the filters to only show the types of plants you want to see. In this case, that's plants from the rainforest or temperate biomes. see, some of the plants currently in the habitat aren't quite right for the tiger, like the wattle bushes. You can remove them if you want. You can find all of the plants you need in the nature section, and you can use the filters to only show the types of plants you want to see. In this case, that's plants from the rainforest or temperate biomes.
They say the good fences make good neighbors. I guess that's doubly true when one of the neighbors is a Bengal tiger. Still, those tigers look so happy that I doubt they'd leave, even if you did poke a hole in their fence. Oh, but for heaven's sake, don't test that theory.
Right, let's head over to the Indian peafowls. I've been told that we need to improve their social welfare. Now then, just find one of the peafowls and select them to open their information panel. Then we can have a good gander at how they're doing. Although technically, I suppose gandering would just be for geese. Expand their social welfare and we can get a bit more detail. Now, they've clearly got plenty of space and they're not stressed, but it looks like their social group isn't quite right. So let's find out more. Click on the social tab at the top of their information panel to see what's wrong. Right, as you can see, the peafowls need their population to be larger. To solve this little problem, you'll need to adopt 3 more female peafowls. Off you pop to the animal market then. Good work on those peafowls. I expect they'll be delivered soon. But sadly, it sounds like our snow leopard is a bit grumpy. Let's head over there and see what's wrong with her. Just like people, animals can suffer from stress if things aren't quite right. You know, like when you see someone put in the milk before the tea bag. In the case of these snow leopards, they're a bit stressed by their lack of privacy. You can lower their stress levels by swapping out the normal glass barrier by their cave for one-way glass. It's not a cheap option, but I think they're worth the expense, don't you? This will give the snow leopards somewhere to go when they want to get away from the prying eyes of the guests. Of course, when an animal isn't in its natural biome, it's probably going to be too hot or too cold. Unsurprisingly for the snow leopards, it's too hot. Even with the terrible British weather, you should help cool it down by adding some coolers to their habitat. But let's start by opening up the temperature heat map and having a look-see at the temperature in the leopard's habitat. As you can see, we already have one cooler in there. Let's pop some more down and get as much of the habitat as chilly as we can. Luckily for us, this habitat already has power, but you'll need to make sure of that in the future. Just so you know, if any part of a habitat is powered, then the whole habitat will be powered.
You do know Stefan now. Air Chapter, Alflami Guapo.
You can find heat maps for all sorts of helpful things, so do be sure to explore them and make good use of them. It'll take a little while for the temperature to adjust once you've added coolers or heaters, but now we've got the coolers in, we can address the leopard's terrain welfare. You see, what the leopards really want in here is snow and rock, so let's make that happen. You can find heat maps for all sorts of helpful things, so do be sure to explore them and make good use of them. It'll take a little while for the temperature to adjust once you've added coolers or heaters, but now we've got the coolers in, we can address the leopard's terrain welfare. You see, what the leopards really want in here is snow and rock, so let's make that happen. Well then, all of that should give you a pretty good understanding of how to make animals happy. So I'd like you to go and check on all the other animals in the zoo and fix up any issues with their habitats. That'll increase the average welfare of the animals across the whole zoo. And that average welfare is a very important statistic. Now, to quickly see how all your animals are doing in the zoo, you should go into Zoo Management and then into the Animals section. As you can see, this list shows you the animal's overall welfare. So, if something's amiss, then you can quickly pop over to them using the Locate button. Right, I'm off for a cuppa while you make sure all the animals are well looked after.
Imperolis. Sao? Oh, for God's sake! Come on,
Not bad. Not bad at all. I think it's fair to say that you've passed the first part of your training with flying colours. There's still lots more to learn, but we'll have to head to another one of Bernie's zoos for that. If you want to grab your passport, we'll head off, shall we?
Sounds like you've got the whole zoo purring away nicely. Well, purring, grunting, screaming, booming. All the appropriate noises. I guess I was right to hire you, huh? Don't tell her I told you, but Nancy wasn't sure you'd even last the morning. So, we're happy this is working out. And Nancy owes me a foxy coffee. As strange as it seems, considering we just met, when I look at you, I feel like you're the child I never had. After the one I did have, obviously. But you see, zookeeping's not for my daughter. Don't get me wrong. Emma absolutely loves animals, but she set her sights somewhat higher. Wants to save the entire planet. I'll just settle for saving a couple of species. And maybe having a type of frog named after me.
Ik kan nog levela.
Ja, ik zit te pauze, ik zal het denken.
Dat is dus in de teen Zerimla. En Serama. En Skessen.
Welcome to Madagascar. It's quite the change of scenery from dreary old England, huh? Apart from the weather, I suppose. They don't call these places rainforests for nothing. The zoo you'll be working in is an ape sanctuary, where we're doing vitally important conservation work. Not just for apes, but for all kinds of species. But apes, well, apes are some of the closest relatives to humans there are. And yet, the way the world treats them is like, well, very much like some of us treat our actual relatives. Anyway, that's why I'm determined that our operation here does some good. If we can all leave some part of the world in a better state than we found it, we'll have lived lives worth living. And speaking of states, I have a horrible feeling I left the house in the right one. When I get back, I expect my life won't be worth living at all.
What do you think of Madagascar then? Bit warm for my taste, to be honest. Anyway, this is Bernie's primate sanctuary. It's not just primates though, we've got all sorts of animals. So why don't we go and have a look at some of them, eh? We'll start by taking a look at the red ruffed lemurs. They're the ones that look like they should be in a Shakespeare play. Come on, let's head over to them. Ruffed lemurs are found in the rainforests of Masoala, that's in northeast Madagascar. They can actually live anywhere from 15 up to 25 years. Fancy that, eh? Okay, when you're ready, let's go find our Bornean orangutans. The Bornean orangutan is such a marvellous creature. They're always a big favourite at any zoo they feature in, and they're also the biggest tree-dwelling animal on the planet. Assuming you don't count any lions that got stuck up one. Oh, why don't you take a better look at them? Open up their information panel and go into the animal camera. Aren't they just incredible? When you're ready, let's go and have a look-see at some of our beautiful bonobos. They're quite the characters. Oh dear! It looks like we've arrived just in time. One of the habitat's barriers has collapsed. And wouldn't you know it, one of the bonobos has made a run for it. We'll need to catch them. But before we do, we should box up the other bonobos to stop them escaping too. Select the habitat boundary to bring up the habitat information panel. Good. Now open the Animals tab. And click on Box All Animals to box up the remaining bonobos. Now, we'll need a vet to recapture that escaped bonobo, but it seems our last one left to do some research in the wild. Not an ideal situation. So, we'll need to hire a replacement sharpish. Go into the zoo section and then into the staff management area. You can find all of your staff in here, but there's no time to go looking at their particulars at the moment. Hire a vet. Now, click on one of the paths to place the vet in your zoo. Great, now let's deal with our escapee before they can cause too much havoc. Use the animal alerts to jump to the escaped bonobo. And then click on the Call Vet button to call the vet over to capture it. Okay, that's a relief. So while the vet deals with our bonobo friend, let's go fix up their habitat so they can't escape again. Head back over there. As you can see, the barrier's collapsed. Someone's taken their eye off the ball, obviously. Let's get this one replaced. Select the barrier and then we'll edit it. Delete the broken section of barrier and replace it with a brand spanking new one. Good. Now that we've done that, we need to make sure to add climb-proof barriers to the top. That way the bonobos won't be able to climb out. Just make sure you've got the correct piece of barrier selected when you do that. Nicely done. And I think it's high time we unboxed those bonobos, wouldn't you say? The poor mites will get sad if we leave them in there for too long. Select the habitat barrier to bring up the habitat information panel again. So, it turns out that as well as the old vet leaving, the zoo's mechanics did too. We'll need to hire a couple of new ones so we can help stop any more breakouts. You see, mechanics do all sorts of helpful things around the zoo, but one of their most important jobs is taking care of the habitat barriers. Without mechanics around to repair them, the barriers will crack, crumble and fall down. And before you know it, we'll be overrun with escaped animals. Go into the zoo section and then into the staff management area again. Hire a mechanic and then click on a path to place them in the zoo. And then click on the path again to hire a second mechanic. As you can see, you don't have to go back into staff management if you're hiring lots of the same type of staff member. Oh, gosh, we have been busy, haven't we? Good work there. I'm off for a cuppa. Oh, I think Bernie wants a word with you.
Oh, I hear you had a bit of an issue with an escaped bonobo. The main thing is that you dealt with it swiftly, and more importantly, without the animals stealing someone's clothes, putting them on, and then walking out of the front gate.
You see, another key responsibility for our vets is animal research. Researching animals allows vets to unlock new enrichment items, additional information for our education resources, enhanced breeding programs, and improvements to food quality. Oh, the animals' food, not the vets. It'll take more than a research grant to improve the staff canteen. Anyway, as you can see, research is a key part of running your zoo. In order for a vet to undertake research, they require a research centre. And once again, that's something that this zoo is missing. So let's build one. I've marked out an area for you to put it. Now, you've probably noticed that there's already a building where I want you to build the research centre. Don't worry. You see, the building that's currently there is actually a hollow shell, so we're able to place our new building inside of it. If you select the research centre for placement and then hover over the shell, you'll see that it asks if you want to add the research centre to the existing building. Okay, click to add it to the building. Oh, but that won't place it in just yet, though. First, we'll need to rotate our research centre so it automatically connects to the path when we place it. Right, splendid work. Now that we have a brand spanking new research centre, we can give our vets something to do in there. Oh, by the way, it's worth noting that the vets will only do research when they're not required to do any other jobs. That said, you can change what jobs a vet does via their information panel. But let's not worry about that just now. So, let's get our vet researching ringtail lemurs. Go into the zoo section and select Vet Research. Here, you can see a list of all the animals present in your zoo, and also all the potential diseases that can occur. Now, drag and drop your vet onto the ring-tailed lemur to start their research. Actually, thinking about it, I'm not sure we've got any education boards or speakers by the lemurs habitat. Let's head over there and add some, so our guests can learn all about the furry little delights. First off, let's pop down 2 education boards. Place them on the habitat barriers at a height that guests can see, or, if you like, pop them down on a stand. Okay, now that they've been put into position, we have to tell them what animal to display information about. Select one of the education boards to bring up its information panel. And from the drop-down list, select Ring-tailed lemur. Although I'm sure that last part was obvious. When you link an education board or a speaker to an animal, you need to make sure that said animal is close by. If it isn't, the guests will get confused and won't learn as much. Fantastic! Oh, it's worth remembering that education boards and speakers both need power to work. They won't do much good without it. Oh, it looks as though our vet has completed their research on ring-tailed lemurs. We'll need to collect the results. We can do that by clicking on the notification or by going back into the vet research area. Go on, collect your research rewards. Just so you know, vets will continue to research an animal even after successfully completing a research level. I suppose when you're in the zone, you're in the zone. Well, now that we've enriched the lives of our guests, let's enrich the lives of our ring-tailed lemurs. Some animals, like lemurs, will have a climbing need. That means they have a requirement for a certain amount of climbing space, and you can fulfill that requirement by building them a climbing frame. Let's find out how much more climbing space our lemur friends need, shall we? Select one of them and bring up their information panel. Next, click on the Terrain tab. Now, as you can see, the lemurs need quite a lot more climbing space. But as it happens, I've already got a climbing frame blueprint built for you. So you can either pop that down or build one yourself from scratch. By the way, it's not always just climbing needs that you have to worry about. Other animals might need a certain amount of water in their habitat so they can go for a swim. They certainly do keep us on our toes. Oh, that's a great climbing frame for them. They're going to absolutely love it. Do you know what would make them even happier, though? Nicer food. But that's true of all of us, though, isn't it? You can unlock better quality food for animals through research. Luckily, we've already unlocked some for the lemurs, so all that remains is to make sure they get served it from now on. Let's bring up the habitat information panel by selecting the lemur habitat. Oh, that's a great climbing frame for them. They're going to absolutely love it. Do you know what would make them even happier, though? Nicer food. But that's true of all of us, though, isn't it? You can unlock better quality food for animals through research. Luckily, we've already unlocked some for the lemurs, so all that remains is to make sure they get served it from now on. Let's bring up the habitat information panel by selecting the lemur habitat. Lovely. Now select the Animals tab. There we go. As you can see, we can set the food quality in here. Just click on the drop-down menu and select Grade 2 Food Quality. Grade 2 Food Quality. My mouth's already watering. So, a new climbing frame and better food. Oh, you've really spoilt those lemurs rotten. Now, I think it's time we looked at one of the zoo's most important responsibilities, releasing animals into the wild. You see, when we feel an animal is ready, we can release them into the wild. But what makes an animal a good candidate for release? Well, their age is an important factor. I mean, we can't release an animal that's a juvenile, just as we can't release one that's gotten too old. They'll also need to be fertile. After all, the idea is to repopulate the wild, so the best candidates will have a high fertility gene. And together, the age and fertility of a candidate will determine how many conservation credits we'll be rewarded when we release them. Now, conservation credits are vitally important. They're the lifeblood of your zoo, because earning them allows you to adopt even more animals. And what's more, the animals you can adopt will be of a higher quality. So, with that in mind, let's pop over to our orangutan habitat. Okay, I'd like you to find Agang, the Bornean orangutan in the habitat, and select him, please. You can either click through each orangutan in turn, or select the habitat barrier, go to the Animals tab in the Habitat Information panel, and find him in the Animals list. I know it's sad to see him go, but he'll be happy out in the wild. And he's a wonderful candidate for release, young, strong and fertile. Excellent work there. You've definitely got potential, you know.
Ah, I see you've been doing some homework. Although, it hardly seems like work when you're learning about something as adorable as a ring-tailed lemur. I imagine I'd have got much better grades at school if there'd been less algebra and more aldebra. Tortoises.
Lovely. Now let's build a new exhibit in the gap that's been left. Just add it to the building like we did with the research centre earlier, then pop it into the gap. Perfect. The next thing to do is adopt an exhibit animal to go in there. How about a Gila monster? Open up the exhibit trading section and adopt one. Just as we do with habitat animals, we need to send the Gila monster to the exhibit. Click on the exhibit to send it there. When you send an animal to an exhibit, it'll automatically be given the correct setup. But that doesn't mean it's completely ready for them. So let's finish it off. We'll start by adding some enrichment items. Click on the exhibit to bring up its information panel. Good. Now click on the Layout tab. Oh, well, it looks like we've only got the Enrichment Level 1 items unlocked at the moment. Never mind, let's turn on at least one of them for the Gila monster. That's the ticket. And the last thing we need to look at is setting up the different windows. So click on the Windows tab. You can edit and customize any of the windows on an exhibit. A window can be closed and blank, or have a 2-dimensional background, or even a 3-dimensional background on it. Why don't you have a play around with the options? There's also an exhibit education board. Pop them down near your exhibits to teach your guests about them. Let's add one now. Just like the education boards and speakers we put down for the ring-tailed lemurs, you'll need to link these to the Gila monster. Go on. Lovely stuff. Now our guests can learn all about our venomous friend here. Right, now, I've got a bit of a big job for you. I need you to increase the number of species in the zoo. You'll probably want to adopt both habitat and exhibit animals to do so, which will mean building plenty of new habitats and exhibits for them. Go on, off you pop. I'll check in with you when you're almost done.
Para a la
No super, sit down snap. Alstom
Moham Vasalu Vodka. File mit das Dante. Und Sela Chusuela.
Das ist groß. East Lamina.
Eat down now.
Just in the tail.
Buongiorno, Camomina. Buongiorno, Camomina. Buongiorno, camomina Zifty.
My, you have been busy, haven't you? Splendid! But now that you've adopted all these lovely new species, we need to make sure they're nice and happy. So let's get the average welfare across the zoo nice and high, shall we? And by we, I mean you. Go on, get to it.
my daughter's favorite animal. I think it's fair to say that if ever there was an animal which has captured the public's imagination, it's pandas. Oh, well, that's assuming you ignore cats and dogs, obviously. It'll take more than a cute bear to knock them off of the top spot. Oh, but did you know, thanks to the incredible conservation work that's being done in China and around the world, pandas are no longer endangered. Amazing! That said, they're still considered vulnerable. So, this zoo is extraordinarily lucky and honored to be part of that conservation effort. It really speaks to our reputation, a reputation that you're going to be in charge of maintaining, along with all the general maintaining too. I really can't tell you how important the welfare of those pandas is. Oh, wait, I can. It is vitally important. The eyes of the world are on you, my friend. Although, perhaps more pressingly, the eyes of Nancy are on you too.
Welcome to China. This is Bernie's brand new Panda Celebration Zoo. So new, in fact, that it's not quite finished, but we'll deal with that later. First, let's take a tour of the zoo. Obviously, the giant pandas are the main attraction for this zoo, and luckily for us, we have one which was born just a few days ago. Let's go and have a look at it. Go on, don't be shy. Select the panda cub. And click on the camera to enter animal camera mode. Oh, doesn't it just warm the cockles of your heart? So cute! Did you know that giant pandas, or Ailuropoda melaleuca if we're being formal, are the only entirely herbivorous bears? They can actually eat up to 38 kilos of bamboo a day. Not that surprising, given that they'll spend up to 14 hours a day chomping away. I don't imagine this little fluff ball has that kind of appetite yet, though. Oh no. I just got word from one of our keepers that a sable antelope was placed into a habitat without going through quarantine first, and that they're displaying signs of disease. We'll have to move them into quarantine to stop the infection from spreading to the other animals. To do that, go to the highlighted habitat, find the infected animal, and then select them to bring up their information panel. Good. Now click Move and then transfer them into quarantine. I've highlighted the quarantine facility in the zoo for you. Good. Now click Move and then transfer them into quarantine. I've highlighted the quarantine facility in the zoo for you. Oh, phew. That's a relief. Now that we've stopped the infection from spreading any further, we need to build a vet surgery so the antelope can be treated and then returned to his habitat. I've already highlighted where I'd like you to build it, so why don't we head over there? Oh, phew. That's a relief. Now that we've stopped the infection from spreading any further, we need to build a vet surgery so the antelope can be treated and then returned to his habitat. I've already highlighted where I'd like you to build it, so why don't we head over there? In order to build the vet surgery, click on Facilities, Staff Facilities, and then Vet Surgeries. job. Vet surgeries play a very important role in a zoo, as they're the only places that vets can treat the animals. Once there's room for the antelope, the vet will pick them up from quarantine and bring them to the surgery. Yes, diseases can spread through a habitat quite easily, especially if the water inside it isn't being cleaned regularly. As it happens, I just got a report that one of our water treatment facilities has broken down and the water in the flamingo and saltwater crocodile habitats has gotten dirty. I've highlighted the water treatment facility for you, so you should go and check it out. Click on the water treatment facility to bring up its information panel. Yes, I don't think you need a degree in mechanics to tell that this thing's thoroughly banjaxed. Click Call Mechanic to get them to come over and fix it for us. So, just to explain, water treatment facilities work in a similar manner to power sources, in that they have a radius of influence around them. That means any body of water which is even partly within that radius will be cleaned automatically. Also, like power sources, if they get damaged, that radius of influence will shrink, meaning that it might stop cleaning water sources which were only just within its reach. If you want to check how much of your zoo is covered by your water treatment facilities, then there's a heat map you can use to see the coverage. That way, you can quickly spot problem areas and rectify the issue. Good work. Now that the water treatment facility has been repaired, the water will be cleaned up in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. You can also use mechanics to repair power facilities, transport rides, bins, benches, signs, and, as you already know, habitat barriers. Now, I'll be honest, I'm still a little worried about that disease scare we had, so I think we should do some research into it. Doing research into a disease can help prevent future outbreaks of it. And even if we do have an outbreak, it'll make the disease much less potent. I'd like you to start some research into bordetellosis. Disease research can be found in vet research, so head over to your research centre and get one of the vets researching it. Lovely job. Once that research is complete, I expect we'll send that disease packing in no time.
Whew! That was a close-run thing with those antelopes. I dread to think what might have happened if you hadn't got them into quarantine as quickly as you did. Fast thinking there. We had a horrible outbreak of viral gastroenteritis here at Goodwin House. Although, luckily, that was just limited to me and my wife.
Right. Now that we've got all our urgent tasks in hand, we can start to focus on the guests and improving their time in the park. You see, you can also do research into new and improved guest facilities, transport rides, as well as new types of barrier and other things via the workshop. I've highlighted the workshop for you, so head over there, select it, and then click on View Workshop. mechanic to research souvenir shops by dragging and dropping them onto it. I can't wait to see what they come up with. And finally, assign a mechanic to research souvenir shops by dragging and dropping them onto it. I can't wait to see what they come up with. Great stuff. That research will take a little while, so let's have a look at something else in the meantime. Because we've had some good news! It turns out that we're allowed to adopt more giant pandas. The authorities have given us 3 females to help with our breeding programme. Even so, I'm sure you know how notoriously difficult it is to get pandas to breed, so we'll have to be patient. Our current giant panda habitat is full to the brim, but luckily we've already got another habitat ready to go. But before we move our new pandas in, they'll need to go through quarantine. Of course, we can't do that until we've accepted them. So open up animal trading and go into the animal reward section. Just click Transfer to Animal Storage next to each of the pandas, and then they'll be sent there. Finally, we can send them from animal storage to quarantine. To do that, just select them in animal storage, then click Send to Zoo, and then click on the quarantine facility in the zoo. Don't worry, I've highlighted it for you so you can find it easily. While we wait for them to clear quarantine, you should set up their new habitat so they feel at home in there. I'll also need you to bring over one of the male pandas from our other habitat, because without him, we're not going to have much of a breeding program, are we? So go on, move him over and get everything set up for your pandas. While we wait for them to clear quarantine, you should set up their new habitat so they feel at home in there. I'll also need you to bring over one of the male pandas from our other habitat, because without him, we're not going to have much of a breeding program, are we? So go on, move him over and get everything set up for your pandas. while we wait for them to clear quarantine, you should set up their new habitat so they feel at home in there. I'll also need you to bring over one of the male pandas from our other habitat, because without him, we're not going to have much of a breeding program, are we? So go on, move him over and get everything set up for your pandas.
Deal? Und du noch kann. Kan man fire på bitch your ass?
News. Our new female pandas have been given a clean bill of health. You'd best move them into the new habitat so they can settle in. And I hope you've made their habitat as comfy as possible, because animals will only breed if they're happy. Oh, bless. I think they'll be really happy in there. Fingers crossed we'll see some lovely new cubs sooner rather than later. Right, while they're being delivered, we'd better get on with something else. Oh, dear me. There's never any time to rest when you're running a zoo, is there? Well, unless you hit the pause button. Okay, I think it's time I taught you all about work zones. I know, they don't sound as interesting as the animals, but trust me, they're ever so useful. You see, work zones are a way of making sure that your staff concentrate on specific habitats or tasks within the zoo, so they aren't wandering off elsewhere when it's time to feed the animals or the like. So let's start by creating a new work zone and then assigning a keeper to it so that they know to look after the new pandas. To do that, go into the zoo section, then click on staff and then work zones. Click on New Work Zone. To set up your new work zone, I'll need you to select the highlighted habitat gate, staff room and keeper hut. Oh, and don't forget to name it something useful. Once you're done, just go ahead and exit the work zone creator. To set up your new work zone, I'll need you to select the highlighted habitat gate, staff room and keeper hut. Oh, and don't forget to name it something useful. Once you're done, just go ahead and exit the work zone creator. Then, click on your new keeper to bring up their information panel and go to their Employment tab. click on your new keeper to bring up their information panel and go to their employment tab. At the bottom, you can assign them to your new work zone from the drop-down menu. At the bottom, you can assign them to your new work zone from the drop-down menu. At the bottom, you can assign them to your new work zone from the drop-down menu. At the bottom, you can assign them to your new work zone from the drop-down menu. At the bottom, you can assign them to your new work zone from the drop-down menu. At the bottom, you can assign them to your new work zone from the drop-down menu. zookeeper will focus his attention on our new pandas. Oh, and just so you know, all types of staff can be assigned work zones. Just make sure that they have access to all the buildings that they need. And one last thing, you might find it faster to assign them from the Work Zones tab in the Staff section of Zoo Management. That'll save you having to chase around selecting your staff one by one. Oh, it sounds like the brand research has been completed. You should collect your rewards, and you can do that by clicking on the notification or by going back into mechanic research. Now that we've got our lovely new Just a Memento shop designed, you should build one of them near the zoo's exit. That way the guests won't miss it on their way out and we won't miss out on their money. Now that we've got our lovely new Just a Memento shop designed, you should build one of them near the zoo's exit. That way the guests won't miss it on their way out and we won't miss out on their money. Now that we've got our lovely new Just a Memento shop designed, you should build one of them near the zoo's exit. That way the guests won't miss it on their way out and we won't miss out on their money.
Now we're full of better sparrow. Eller Ringtail. Bella Station. Janos, Sheila Adams.
Leo Wanos Caponi, sei salvativo, Joxo di Crashamo, Antana Viso. Von Alvo Bella Black Mesa, Papa, Gloria, von Islam.
Janos, Sheila Adams.
Jasper ratio for Judo ratio Katsumagozano. Cantabro ratio Mikel Lupi per considerable dose of you and Jasoreshi.
Alstom Panel.
Varför du ser inte en
Leo Wanos Caponi, sei salvativo, Joxo di Crashamo, Antana Viso. Von Alvo Bella Black Mesa, Papa, Gloria, von Islam.
Janos, Sheila Adams.
Leo Wanos Caponi, sei salvativo, Joxo di
Now that we've got our lovely new Just a Memento shop designed, you should build one of them near the zoo's exit. That way the guests won't miss it on their way out and we won't miss out on their money.
Open your eyes. I like that. You cannot say no intention to put yourself.
La settlement nula gestoratio ol etu exor. Penus in moa tipi perico. Put minus sabrum 5 macolubum.
Avans a stellar in the day.
Le steel one of Capoda, who est bon palci Ringtail navata per guardato al fiori al tuta in Asia, tuta Australia ed Inada. Mercatina per gioco di pomsconi, a cui bubu a navo a cantoni a corsa jampona.
Now that we've got our lovely new Just a Memento shop designed, you should build one of them near the zoo's exit. That way the guests won't miss it on their way out and we won't miss out on their money.
They will find control upon a contemplation report. You want it, but
Oh, that's ever so wonderful, that is. Anyway, I'm just off for a moment, but I'm sure I'll have some more jobs for you to look at shortly.
Aw, those pandas look just adorable. I can see why people keep foolishly forgetting that they're wild bears. And good work on that new gift shop branding. Just a memento. Very clever. Much better than our old overpriced gifts branding. I'm all for truth in advertising, but it was perhaps a little on the nose.
Back as promised. Right, I'd like you to increase the number of different species in the zoo. Now, you can find out what species are already in your zoo by going into the zoo section and then into the animals area.